What made you lose your temper at a teacher? Story 1. Not me, but a girl flipped out on my economics professor because she kept canceling class without sending out emails. The girl only had that class on Fridays and drove an hour to get there. It sucked. She got caught in traffic just to get a note next to the classroom saying canceled. Ugh, my college did the same thing to part-time students. We make special arrangements to leave work earlier on days that we have classes so that we can get through the rush hour traffic in time. And then when we get there, we find out the class has been canceled. This happened to me in college. I was near the end of my senior year and needed to take an elective to satisfy degree requirements. I took up basketball since I love the game. The professor was an assistant coach for the school's basketball team, and he didn't give a damn about the class. Our class starts at 8 a.m. in the old basketball gym on campus, and he was the only way that we could get into the gym. A few times he had a colleague come open the gym for us, but at least 7 or 8 times over the semester he just didn't show up at all, so after 15 minutes the students just went back to their dorms or apartments. I was a commuter driving 45 minutes each way, so I had to skip work on the days I had class. I was working to pay for school. Near the end of the semester, someone in class asked him about his attendance. Then he made an announcement that anyone that doesn't show up for the final exam, basically whoever could make a basket, would fail. On the day of the final exam, he didn't show up. No colleague, nothing. On that last day, there were 30 students in freezing cold sitting outside of the gym in December. During professor evaluations, I ripped him a new one and wished I could have let him know to his face that his laziness cost me money. Similar situation with me in college, but in Spanish 1, the professor showed up half the time. I and all the other students ripped him a new one in the evaluations. We also kept reporting him throughout the semester because we weren't learning Spanish, and it was not only required, but Spanish 2 was as well. To this day, I've never learned Spanish. I dropped Spanish 2 after I looked at the first test and there were just teardrops where my name went. I knew that's where my name went, but I couldn't do anything else on the exam. It wasn't just me either. There were several people in my Spanish 2 class who were in my Spanish 1 class who were clueless. We tried going to the dean, but with no luck. They wouldn't let us retake Spanish 1 because we've got A's, even though we knew nothing. In the end, I literally ended up switching colleges that didn't have a foreign language credit requirement. It's like that stuff cursed me or something. I was so excited about learning another language and still want to, but for the life of me, I can't. I am hoping when my son enrolls in Spanish in high school next year, we will learn together. Story 2. A friend of mine wanted to go to a certain university that was out of state and somewhat tough to get into. The counselor told him not to waste his time as he would never get in. This pissed him off, so he went to the principal, who told him to trust the counselor as that was her job. He applied anyway, got accepted, and taped 2 copies to the counselor and principal's door. He couldn't afford to go anyway, but he was trying to prove a point. Something similar happened to me. I left public school in the 5th grade for various reasons and was homeschooled from there. I still had friends who went to public school, so senior year of high school I wanted to go back. We went to the assigned counselor and she just took a glance at our transcripts and asked what we wanted to do once we graduated. Upon mentioning college, she laughed, like an out loud throw your head back laugh, and said that I'll never make it and that my only hope is to take the classes offered by the local factories if I wanted to graduate. Guess who's in junior year now? Ha, congrats. You'd think teachers and counselors would do anything they could to motivate the student. My English and Lit teacher junior year of high school told me I'd never make it anywhere in life, much less college. 7 years later, I have my master's. I never said anything back to her. She was a lonely older woman who lived with a bunch of cats. I felt sorry for her, so I kept my mouth shut. P.S. Stay in college as long as you can. The real world sucks. Story 3. Oof, that brought back a bad memory. My mother and father passed when I was in my final year of school. I was off school for a while around the time of the second funeral. When I returned to school, my tutor decided it was her job to tell the class what had happened with me right there in front of everyone instead of letting me do it on my own terms. To say I lost my temper would be an understatement. My mom died when I was in the 6th grade. Everyone already seemed to know about it when I got back, so I guess the students were told ahead of time. One thing I found taxing was all the teachers telling me how much they felt sorry for me and that I could ask them for anything. My history teacher put me in a very long and awkward handshake/hand-holding session and talked to me about when his mom died. I knew they were all trying to be comforting, but I really just wanted to be left the hell alone. I lost my mom in 5th grade. In the 4th grade, I knew she was dying. Despite my mom never being able to sit down due to cancer near her rectum, she walked the half-mile to my school and brought cookies for my entire class every Friday. One girl said that my mother was a fat whale. Instead of crying or getting angry, I had learned to write down my feelings at a young age. I wrote that I wanted to stab this girl several times for talking about my mom like that. The entire class and teacher knew she was sick. I was sent away to an alternative school and punished for having angry thoughts. When my mom died in September of 2002, I got back to school and everyone stared at me. I also didn't have friends to begin with, so I felt extremely isolated and ended up lashing out with anger. I was again targeted by the same girl who told me that she was glad my mom died because her cookies weren't good, which was a bold lie, and again I lashed out by writing in a personal journal. I guess I just wanted to tell this story because I never lost my temper with a teacher, but I did internally with students who were just cruel to me, and instead of the teachers just putting me in a new class, I was punished and sent away because I was a danger. If you know a kid that has lost their parents, ask them if they want a really long hug and then tell them to write down 20 of their favorite things they did with their lost parent. No one helped me remember my mom, and it's even worse for my little sister. She was a wonderful mother. Story 4. I flipped on several teachers, but this one still bugs me. One of my best friends in high school had died in a car accident, and a couple of days later, my friends and I told my teacher we would not be able to make it to class because of the viewing. She then proceeded to tell us that we needed to plan our days better and how irresponsible it was of us. I've never felt so much rage. Screw you, Mrs. Weaver. Geez, how big was the school? Every time we had a classmate die, we generally got an assembly about it. Even got one when nobody in the school was involved, though they had to do with suicide and drunk driving as opposed to terminal cancer, etc. I don't know if that is better or worse, though it was a small school with only about 300 to 400 kids. Do you generally know the people? Pretty sure you'd lose your job as a teacher saying that where I live. Had a college professor tell a classmate this, pretty much the exact same scenario, and the teacher said, once you get into the professional world, you won't be able to just take time off all willy-nilly like this. So I'm going to hold you to the same standard. We were in a teacher education program. The rest of the class straight up walked out of class at that moment, and she got pissed. Myself and 2 other students contacted the university's VP of Student Affairs to let him know, and he called us within 30 minutes to have us come in and give him our official statements on the matter. He then contacted the other 15 or so students who were in the room and got their accounts as well. The professor was suspended for the rest of the semester. When I was 13, my grandma died and we took the day off of school to go to her funeral. My mom made sure to call me and my sister in to let them know that we wouldn't be there. Right after we buried her, my mom got a call from the school asking where me and my sister were. My mom flipped and said we just buried her mother. The school said they were sorry but asked if we could still make it in. My mom hung up right then and there. More happened after that, but I was never told what happened. Story 5. My IT teacher wanted to inspect my work, spreadsheets, or a Word document or something, but she accidentally deleted the file. I was upset and tried to point out that she just deleted my work. She started to shout at me, telling me I should have saved frequently. I shouted back telling her that wasn't the issue, and she outright deleted the file. It got pretty heated. My parents were called. We were outright yelling at each other for a good couple of minutes to the point where we were both in tears. I was about 14 at the time. She should have known better. A few years later, my sister had her when she went to that school, and the same teacher berated my sister, calling her names, etc. I had a teacher like that. She taught all the business classes. I was doing okay in her class. She was really scatterbrained and always put us onto some program on the computers so that she could catch up on her stuff. For one of our assignments, we had to fill out this paper and answer questions and turn it in. In her class, papers counted as a hefty part of the final grade. I filled mine out, turned it into her, and went on my way. When she finally gets around to grading them and handing them back, I notice I didn't get one. I asked her about it, and her response was, "Oh, I must have misplaced it. I know you turned it in. If you redo it and turn it in, I'll give you a 50%. That's an automatic F in our school. When I told my parents, they were pissed and switched me to a different class. I was in an extracurricular robotics competition when I was in high school. It was just something fun to me, but was taken pretty seriously by the school, as they wanted the attention that winning would bring. I was in charge of the photography of everything, which was great because I got to do something I found more interesting than making robots, and I wasn't going to be blamed if we lost. So I took pictures of everything and stored them on the computers at school. This was a full year's project, so there were probably 50 pics every time we did work, and that adds up over a year. At the end of the year, after everything is done, I hand over everything I've got to the teacher in charge of it, and I didn't think anything of it, until the rest of the faculty comes asking about the pictures. Apparently, they only got like a couple hundred, and it was only for the final competition. Somehow, that teacher had deleted them, and luckily, almost everyone on the faculty believed me because they saw me using this giant-ass camera all year. If they hadn't believed me though, I can imagine the yelling I'd be doing towards that teacher. Story 6. I know a chap who once lost it in a lesson and threw a chair at the teacher, some years, like 15 or so back, and the two are now good friends. Essentially, a discussion had turned into an argument, holding up the rest of the lesson, with the chap basically being awkward and pedantic, not letting it go, getting unduly steamed up himself, and apparently not realizing that everyone was getting pretty tired. The teacher made some snide remark and the chap flipped, threw a chair, and walked out. He waited outside though, cooling off, and afterward the teacher went outside as well, saying something to the effect of, "I think we both ought to apologize for what just happened," and so they did, and all was well. When I was a junior in high school, I had a teacher who would randomly fly off the handle. He got fired after dragging a kid across the gym by his hair. This is a different story though. We were trying to put a movie on and he can't figure out why the TV won't switch channels. He's pressing every button, getting more and more frustrated by the second. We all see it. We all know what's going to happen. This kid Felix tries to help, but the teacher just goes off on him. He's yelling, telling the kid he doesn't know what he's talking about. Felix is getting upset and says, "It's not that hard, dude." Cue the teacher screaming, "Get out now!" Calmly, Felix stands up, walks across the room to the door, and on the way out says, "You don't have to be a prick." Felix leaves and the teacher follows. We're all kinda in stunned silence and looking at each other. I grab the remote to the TV, hit the input button until we see the DVD screen, and then set the controller back down. Nobody tells him the truth, I say. Just say I pressed a ton of buttons. I had a professor who was a saint, truly a beautiful man. Everybody loved him. He was the head of a department that was dying, and he was getting dicked around by the powers that be at the school, and it was a terrible shame. One day we all showed up for class, and a couple of people from another department were in our room. The sweetest man alive lost his ever-loving mind. He was furious. The other professor was 50 years younger than him, at least, and my professor got all up in his face. It was hilarious and horrifying. The best part was when my teacher poked the other in the chest while they were arguing, and the young guy said, "Don't even do it, man. I'm a black belt, douche." My angelic teacher responds, "I'm about to take off my black belt." Everyone's jaws were on the floor. My buddy leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Did he just threaten to spank him?" He did. I really think he did. Story 7. A couple of weeks into my senior year of high school, the president gave a speech about the importance of school or something. I don't know, I wasn't really paying attention. Anyway, all of the teachers in my school had to set up their projectors so that we could watch it. My math teacher couldn't figure out how to get her projector working, so me being the nerdy kid, I offered to help. She had a fit. She started screaming about how she wasn't stupid and how I needed to just sit down and shut up. After a few more minutes of her failing to fix it, she pointed at me and ordered me to fix it. I said, "Fix it yourself." She told the whole class to go next door to watch the speech in that teacher's room. When we got up to leave, she pulled me to the side and told me that when the class got back, I was going to stand up and apologize for being so rude to her. I refused and went to join the rest of the class. She spent the rest of the year making my life miserable. She told me on several occasions that she was going to make sure that I failed her class. Sure enough, I failed her class. The only class I ever failed. Man, this really reminds me of a story I have about a teacher of mine. Also in high school, a teacher wanted to play a movie on a disc, but she kept pressing the eject button, expecting that it was the play button, or some crap. I don't know what she was thinking. The third time she went to press the same button after inserting the disc again, I may have slightly snapped that she shouldn't press the button, to which my teacher responds, "Well, sorry, at least I get along better with people than with computers." Cue class laughter due to the sick burn of the teacher. It sticks around for a bit, but the next day people have forgotten all about it. Fast forward to the next time I have that class. Start of the lesson, the teacher waits until everyone is seated and says, "I'm sorry about what I said last lesson. I was unaware that you're autistic. As far as I'm aware, I don't have any form of autism." Maybe she should have called me a spastic due to my ADHD, but honestly, 10 years later, and I'm still salty about that one. And it probably left her vapid head the moment after she said it. This reminds me of a time I had a mandatory religious and moral education class when I was like 14. We had a substitute teacher that was supposed to put on a video and she couldn't figure out how to put it on with the sound on the computer. After about 20 minutes of everyone talking to each other while the teacher with help from an equally useless teacher's pet, exclaimed, "Does anyone know how to turn the bloody sound on?" And a mad lad shouted back, "I think it would help if you clicked the big red X." Sure enough, the teacher clicked on the big red X, commonly known as the close button to high IQ individuals, and the class roared with laughter. Shut us up 5 seconds later when she reopened the video and the sound actually worked. Story 8. There was a high school English teacher, Miss Blades, who was ignoring me for a while. It's worth mentioning that she didn't really like me for some reason. I wasn't a bad or annoying kid. In fact, I was very non-confrontational and mostly kept to myself in and out of class, so I don't know what that was about. Anyway, I had my hand up because I had to use the bathroom, and she kept pacing around the room answering other kids' questions but would glance at me and immediately look away. After about 5 minutes with my hand up and getting ignored and about to crap my pants, I whistled as loud as I could. Interrupting anyone was completely out of character for me. Well, once upon a time I had chipped one of my front teeth, so I could whistle extremely loud because of it. My whistle was just that. It was the whistling equivalent of firing a gun in a closed room. Absolutely deafening. The entire room got quiet, and she snapped her head around so fast. As her name might suggest, Miss Blades was staring daggers into my face. Then one kid goes, "Ooh, he just called you a dog." Then she gained serious momentum from that one-off and said, "Oh, I don't think so. You think I'm a dog? You think I'm a dog?" I got sent to the principal's office for disrespecting an ignorant teacher. I used the bathroom on the way there. Similar, but not really. I had to use the bathroom during my sophomore year of college, and I just got up to go. When I got back in, my professor started to go off on me for disrupting class and how rude it was. I sat 2 seats from the door. She tried shaming me for about 2 minutes, but you can't shame an asshole. So I just fired back and said I wasted exactly 0 minutes of anyone's time, since I already know all of this crap and could teach it better than you, considering I tutor 6 people in this class, and you trying to shame me wasted more time than I was in the bathroom. I had a guy in my class in high school that asked if he could go to the bathroom, and the teacher said no. The dude looked like he was in distress, like his bladder was about to burst. He was pleading with her, and she kept refusing. He finally said, "Look, I have to go so bad it hurts. If you don't let me go, I'm going to piss in your trash can." She told him no again, thinking she'd called his bluff. She was wrong. The dude walked right up to the front of the class and let loose in her trash can. The look of absolute horror on that old lady's face is still one of the funniest goddamn things I've ever seen. Story 9. When I was in 8th grade, my science teacher decided the day before the last test of the year to give us an extra 16 pages of new material to learn by ourselves and appear in the test. Needless to say, everyone lost their crap and started complaining. I wrote her an angry letter. I was later forced either to apologize or they would tell my parents. I apologized because I may have been a little inappropriate. And by the end of the year, she was fired after her first year in the school. She also thought it was a good idea to bring her dogs to part of the lessons in the science lab, when there are 2 kids who are allergic to dogs. When I was 13 or 14, my buddies and I made a website trashing on our school. We had a gossip blog where people could share their gossip on a BBS board, and I wrote little articles from things I gathered around school. We had a computer teacher who taught the Microsoft suite, basically. I was capable of making websites. I didn't need to learn more about Microsoft Word, but that was the only class that let me be around computers. Now, we never once updated or logged into that site from a school computer. We did it all from home PCs, so they couldn't punish us for working on it at school. Eventually, the principal found it, and we were really happy we had made this choice. She called us to the office because there were really only 3 people in the school at the time who could make a website, and asked us to take the site down. See, I had written a particularly scathing piece about the computers teacher, in which I said some very nasty things about her that were probably untrue. Apparently, that made her cry. I never admitted to it, except for right here and right now, and the site stayed up. But I did feel bad about writing the piece. She just made me exceedingly angry. I was forced to write an apology once. Some cunt director from a neighboring school was screaming at me for disrupting a choir thing. She was making more noise than I ever did. Said, "Oh crap, sorry." Then she continued to literally scream at me to get out of this chair. I just sat there, obligatory smile on my face because of how ridiculous this was. My school's director, who I thought was cool, comes up and this lady goes to her saying I cussed her out in a bunch of BS. I tried to explain my side and my director told me to leave. I come back to school and get 5 days off in building suspension for threatening and swearing at an authority figure and refusal of instruction, and at the end of the week I could either write an apology or spend another week in IBS. I wish I could say I sent a big FU to the school system, but IBS is boring. After that I said F school and skipped about 50% of the rest of that school year and graduated. Story 10. Did a math test and on the paper you could only mark your answer. You had to do the calculations on another paper. Long story short, my teacher lost my calculations paper and wouldn't admit it. He said I didn't hand it over, that I cheated and some other crap. So I went to the school supervisor and asked to take the test again and she let me. My teacher asked me to look while I did the test, and he made another test, way harder. I freaking aced it right in front of him. He hated my guts for the rest of high school and I couldn't care less. I had a kid in my math class in my sophomore year of high school that was kind of slow at math, but got the hang of it eventually. The teacher didn't like him for whatever reason and made that publicly known when the kid was sick and missed a test. He came in the next day and asked to retake the test, and the teacher said he would email him when he could come and take it. Well, he never did. So 2 weeks pass and the kid is like, "When can I take that test, Mr. Collins?" And Mr. Collins said, "You never came in to take it, so you get a 0. Tough luck." So the kid stands up and very calmly and firmly states, "You told me you would email me when to come and take it, and you never did. I just lost all respect for you because of that." Mr. Collins threatened to send him to ISS if he didn't sit back in his seat, and the kid replied, "I'm going to go ahead and go to ISS, so I don't lose my temper on you. That was really not cool." And he just went to the ISS. Mr. Collins never let him retake that test. Screw math teachers who want you to fail. My senior year of high school, I took a creative writing class to fill in a time slot because even though I only needed like 3 credits, my school still made me take 7 classes. So I just signed up for some easy BS classes and figured I'd write some poems or whatever and get an easy A. End of the year rolls around and this teacher tries to fail me. I asked to see the grade book and she had put in a bunch of zeros for work I had done. I actually still had the assignments, with her comments written on them showing the grades I had actually earned on them. She would write us comments about the writing and hand them back, and I had been smart enough to keep them. I showed her and she said, "Oh, well, sorry, I can't change it now. My grade books are closed." Excuse me? My mom ended up having to schedule a meeting with the principal, where it turned out that this teacher told him I hadn't done the work, after I had already shown her the work with her handwriting on it. So I just pulled out the work and showed the principal. Turns out I actually earned an A, and this teacher was just off her rocker. It was BS, and I hope she has since been fired. A couple of years ago, I went to the hospital with what they thought was meningitis. We were in the midst of a full-on breakout. Long story short, I got poked in the back with a huge needle. Didn't have meningitis, but they didn't patch me correctly, so the spinal fluid leaked into my bloodstream, causing horrific migraines. This all occurred the week before finals, so naturally I had to send out the emails to all of my professors to let them know I couldn't even sit upright without being sick all over myself. All of them were fine with it, except one asshat. I'd missed his class a few times and he'd already called me out, saying I'd better get my act together or I wouldn't get my degree even if I did pass his class. So he said I'd better make it to his exam. It was on a Friday and I sent these emails out on a Monday, so he thought I'd get better by then. And I said, okay, I'll try my best to get it together. Wednesday rolled around and 4 days after the procedure, I was feeling just as bad as I had before. I sent him another message while completely drugged out to resist the pain, and before long I get another email from him, except this email was not only to me but to the doctor at our student health center as well as the dean of engineering. He says, "Is there a reason, insert my name here, is missing my classes and my final exam? Because he needs to be at this exam or he'll be failing my course." The doctor sends an immediate reply, "I've had a checkup on name and I've deemed it necessary for him to be resting in bed at home for no less than 2 weeks from the date of his procedure." Finally, some hope for me yet. The professor says, "Fine, but it'll be a test from a different year." All right, I take it, and holy crap, was it harder than what I'd thought it would be. I got the grade back, and it's a solid 60%, which lowered me to 71% in the class. In engineering, this isn't considered to be a passing grade. So I went straight to the dean and explained this crap to him again. A day later, I got an email from that professor again saying, "Due to the tough nature of the exam, I have gone back and curved it for you. The curve was enough to give you a passing grade, but I hope you've learned something in this process to help you better your future." Screw that, dude. I made it as an engineer, and it was no thanks to you, man. Story 11. I once flipped on my German teacher. I'm German. She obviously didn't like me and her marks were biased as hell. This one time she gave me an F on a poetry interpretation. Grading is ridiculous as you can just interpret it as whatever and the mark depends on the teacher's mood. I always got an A for grammar because this hag has to give me credit where my work is quantifiably good. After handing the papers back out to the students, she did some debriefing about the whole thing, comparing what everyone wrote. She told the whole class how good my thoughts on the poem and some of the passages that I wrote were and wanted me to read out loud what I wrote. I just said, "You gave me an F," stood up and left. I had an English teacher like this too. Nobody believed me until she randomly decided to make us do posters, due the next day. I went above and beyond because I knew she liked my crafty stuff and figured she couldn't possibly give me a bad grade if I was creative. "Oh, this poster is wonderful. Who made it?" "I did." "Oh," and she literally threw it in the trash. Story 12. I had a Spanish teacher, and in order to gain other students' sympathy, she would make fun of one of the students and kind of bully. Not that badly, but well, that student for this hour of class. Of course, other students would sometimes laugh because class was super boring, so it was like a show. I hated that. Of course, she would pick the students who didn't reply back to her provocation, the low-profile type, and of course, she would use the perfect excuse just after being mean. "Oh, it's just a joke." Once, that guy who never searched for trouble with anyone was her victim of the day. She takes him as an example to describe a homeless guy in a picture. After only 10 long minutes, he stands up and leaves the classroom crying, and when she stops him before he leaves, he tells her his dad died the previous night and pushes her away. Once the door closed behind him, she paused for a second and took a crying voice to repeat what he had just said. "My dad just died. Cry, cry, poor baby." Before I realized it, she received my Spanish book in the face, and I called her an ugly slut. Yeah, my insult level isn't great in Spanish. Yeah, my Spanish teacher was the reason I quit Spanish. He was low-key racist. Told a couple of my friends who were some of the most dedicated and sweet people ever he didn't care to help them with things that they were trying to fix. Told me directly and the whole class indirectly that I/we were too stupid to learn things off curriculum/outside class without Google Translate. I asked if I, after reading on how to construct it, could use the past subjunctive on an assignment. Regularly showed up to class 5 to 15 minutes late. To exacerbate matters, we had a period split over lunch, so he'd arrive late at the start of class and after lunch, and was too lazy to tell me I was exempt from the final until after I turned it in. He was also head of the department, and the only Spanish 4 and 5 teachers. Screw you, Kent. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you would like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like, and don't forget to subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time!